Hey guys, welcome in. My name is Adam. This is yourfilterschoice.com. We want to bring you some streaming content to be able to supplement and aid you in your Thanksgiving NFL contests. And what we're going to focus on here is a short snippet of lineup building. Obviously on these holiday slates, these three gamers, we really have to focus in on what we have available. There's a ton of huge contests, and the great thing is you can apply this information and this knowledge to your showdown slates. We're going to be covering the classic slate, however, today on DraftKings. I know on FanDuel a lot of you guys play on there. I personally don't, but for DraftKings and for lineup building purposes, a lot of these same things will apply across the board. So I want to get right into it. I want to make this short, sweet. If you're watching this on Wednesday evening and preparing food like I am, I'm in here in the garage, and it's fitting that I have a lot of projects going on and we're doing lineup building, but really this is preparation. So we want to get your mind right at yourfilterschoice.com. We also want to make sure that you can take advantage of our great, just amazing introductory price right now where you get half off the first 2 months. This is kind of a football, all sports, fall, bonanza thing that we got going out. So $25 for your first 2 months at yourfilterschoice.com. So check that out. Get into our Discord. Obviously, if you are a premium member, you're going to have access to people like myself at YFC V12 or other members of our YFC staff. Obviously, you can ask questions in our premium rooms, and that's where a lot of our, up-to-date information, news, and things is going to get posted in. So yeah, let's prepare for Thanksgiving. Let's prepare for great food, great drink, and some football. We're going to just jump right into it. So for lineup building right now, I do want to cover something that I like to implement. I don't like to go from top to bottom. I know a lot of you rule followers out there. You see the first position, you see the QB, and you're like, oh man, I just got to lock it in. No, what I actually like to do is I like to start out by looking at the slate. If it's a bigger slate, obviously this is much more difficult, but you want to identify from a betting standpoint what the games are that have a higher implied total. So if you're looking at it just from a preliminary standpoint, we do have to look at what we have. 3 games. Chicago, Detroit is the early game. You have the nice little turkey sandwich in the middle, the juicy Las Vegas and Dallas game, and then of course you're going to end it out with a Buffalo and New Orleans game, which may be a little bit different in the outlook right now, but you have Buffalo coming off of a really tough game, New Orleans without Alvin Kamara. So the games that we want to identify, that middle game, you're talking about over 50 implied points right now. Dallas looked really bad against Kansas City, but they have some good things going for them. Dak looked pretty bad, but he does get his blindside protector back, Tyron Smith at left tackle. CeeDee Lamb is kind of a questionable. He may not go, but that offense is extremely explosive. Las Vegas, ever since they got rid of Coach Gruden, has been a high-tempo offense. So it's a team that we really want to look at for value, and I think a lot of our plays, most of the field, and from an ownership standpoint, is going to come from this particular game. So, and touching on that from the first game, we talked about the last one, but the Chicago-Detroit. You get Detroit, unfortunately, on actually all Thanksgiving Day games. They usually lead off the slate here in a divisional matchup, but they are playing the Chicago Bears. I really like this matchup from a real football standpoint, but you're talking about a lower implied total around the 42-ish. So you got 42 points, you got over 50 points, and then you got the last one rounding out with about 46, 45 points. So I want to start out by what I like to look at outside of just the standpoint. Implied points total looks like Dallas is leading the slate at near 30 at 29.25. Buffalo is second. And then, of course, you got Chicago and the Raiders are tying for third. So one of the things I want to look at after this is I want to identify who are in the best matchups in regards to wide receiver versus their particular matchups, and of course any running back skill position players that I want to exploit a team that's doing very poor in there. I do want to highlight one team in particular defensively, and it's kind of weird because I don't really love this player, but I think he's in an amazing matchup. He's probably going to be high owned across most cash games, and GPP is going to get a lot of ownership. But I want to talk about Bears running backs and running backs in general against the Detroit Lions. They rank 30th and 31st respectively in fantasy points per game given up to running backs. Obviously the red zone rank as well, and what they're giving up. They're looking at, from a reception standpoint, not as much. So from a rushing standpoint here, you have David Montgomery, who is in an amazing smash spot, who doesn't even come in near the top of the running backs at only 6K. Last week, he had a tough game. 14 carries, 58 yards, only one target in the receiving game. But, Andy Dalton's back, not a running quarterback, obviously someone who we can look at and say, if this guy is going to sling it with Justin Fields out. I mean, he threw the ball 38 times, I think, in the first game of the season. He's in 16 points against Baltimore is nothing to scoff at. So I think that Montgomery will not be keyed in on, but he will be somebody that can absolutely exploit this terrible Detroit Lions, rushing defense. And then also, in that same positional standpoint, we want to look at Ezekiel Elliott as well. He's a little bit more expensive, $8,000 on DraftKings. I know he's expensive on FanDuel as well. Not the kind of year that people have looked at and hoped for, but obviously he is someone that's getting a lot of targets out of the backfield. He got 6 targets, 6 receptions last game, 3, and then 6 and 4 respectively on the game before that. Also got another 9-target game at New England as I'm looking at here. But man, I'm telling you, with Tyron Smith back, there's going to be some changes in the way that Dallas can attack teams. And if they can protect Dak, that's going to give Zeke more time for those leaked out running back, the screens, the out routes, the swings, the wheels. So he's got a lot of potential from that standpoint. And I think that you want to lock in some really good running backs here. Remember, on DraftKings, we're playing flex positions, so you obviously have that opportunity as well in that. So sliding over to the wide receiver position, we are going to go through a quick lineup build here at the end. I just want to make sure that you guys see kind of where my mentality is. I want to identify that the wide receiver is a freaking, it's a wasteland for Thanksgiving. But Stephon Diggs leading the slate, 7,900. Can we find enough value to smash in 2 good running backs, maybe 3, and then a Stephon Diggs here? 6 targets, 4 receptions, only 23 yards this last game, but still managed to get 2 touchdowns. So return value, 18.3 points. He had his blow-up game at 33.2. I totally understand if you're in the position to where you're just like, man, I really don't want to play Stephon Diggs. He hasn't been the same kind of, wide receiver that he's been in the past, and I've paid up for him. I've gotten burned, but let me tell you, buddy, if you're losing because of Stephon Diggs, it's because you're making bad decisions elsewhere. You're focused too much in on your quarterback and your correlation, and that's something we want to mention, but at the same time, you don't have to play your quarterback with their number 1 wide receiver. One of the most popular ways to get a good quarterback and get exposure to the passing game is take that quarterback and take the secondary wide receiver, the primary tight end, maybe run it with that wide receiver 2 and the tight end, and then running the game back, if it's a good game script, with a wide receiver 1 from the other team. Those are ways to do it, or figure it out on a 3-game slate. We got to kind of figure how these games are going to go, right? So Stephon Diggs obviously at the top right there. CeeDee Lamb's going to be a big deal. If he's questionable right now, is he going to play? If he plays, it changes the outlook here. 6,900 for a wide receiver in a very good matchup. In that same game, Michael Gallup, only 5,900. It's kind of crazy, though, that those Dallas wide receivers are priced up and then everybody else is below them. But I really do like in that Dallas game from the other side, Hunter Renfrow. I mean, he's a target guy. He's definitely someone who's going to get looked at in the red zone. You can also definitely look at, some of their other receivers that Vegas has. I know Bryan Edwards is somebody who has explosiveness. Is kind of disappointing. Hasn't really got the targets. He's definitely someone who can pay off with a touchdown here. But if you're looking at from the other games, I mean, if you're looking at it just from a Chicago, Detroit, and then the Buffalo and the New Orleans standpoint, I mean, the highest priced receiver that we're looking at is a Darnell Mooney right here. 26 points last time out, 16 targets against Baltimore. Andy Dalton was looking his way. Obviously, we had some injuries. Allen Robinson not being there, it created this target funnel. So if Robinson doesn't play, Mooney's going to be somebody we have to consider. One of the guys I really like, though, and I do want to talk, I guess both of these guys, is the Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley pairing. Now, I'm not saying you're going to play these guys together, but against New Orleans tend to be really good against the run. Whether or not that pans out, this is the last game on the slate, so you may not be able to, make a pivot at about this amount of time left, or have the salary left for your lineup. So, we really want to look at that game. I think on the other side of it, from the New Orleans standpoint, we really have to consider a Traquan Smith at only 4,400. He played over 90% of the snaps, has 8 targets this last game, 7 before that, a couple of double-digit DraftKings return on his value on the return points. But Marquez Callaway's also out there. Yeah, man, I mean, they're missing can't guard Mike. Michael Thomas is not there. Drew Brees is not there. It's a different looking team. No Alvin Kamara. I'm actually recording this right after Alvin Kamara news dropped that he won't be in there. So you're going to have a Mark Ingram back in there. So this kind of leads me to think like, okay, well, they're playing at home in New Orleans. So that's good because they play very well at home. It's a good crowd. A lot of teams struggle with that. But at the same time, man, from a game script standpoint, I do think that these wide receivers are going to have a tough time because the running game is not going to be there. You're going to have a really tough time there. I mean, you got a Trevor Siemian out there, you know, a Taysom Hill, these quarterback choices that we're looking at. I mean, what are they going to do? So it's like, you know, you got a good Buffalo defense. Buffalo is probably embarrassed from, you know, recent performances, especially against Indianapolis. 41-15 there. It's not the kind of game that you want to write home about. So obviously looking at it, you know, we talked a little bit about that end game not really being something, maybe more of a good, closer real life football game. The first one kind of the same thing. We identified that we really love David Montgomery there. And I will say that DeAndre Swift, man, this kid, he's special. Out of Georgia, one of the better backs right now in the league. 14 carries, 136 yards. He did have a 57-yarder, obviously. 3 receptions on 4 targets, 25 DraftKings points this last game out. He's going to be somebody that's popular to keep this game kind of close. But, you know, let's kind of switch over to the positions that I do want to talk about a little bit more. We talked a little bit about running back. There's some guys in there that we can consider. You can look at the Las Vegas running backs. I mean, Dallas gives up a lot in between the 20s. They lock it down in the red zone, but they're bottom 10 in the league in giving up points to running backs, you know, in between the 20s. But, you know, you could look at Kenyon Drake, you could look at a Josh Jacobs. I'm not super sold on either one of those guys. I kind of missed on Kenyon Drake this last week. I thought that he was going to do much better than he did. Didn't get the targets, didn't get the volume. You know, it is what it is. Sometimes we miss on these things. But, you know, outside of that, you know, we talked about some running backs that we like and no Kamara now. So, you know, who are we going to play? You can play one of the Buffalo running backs. New Orleans stout against the run. So, you know, going back to it, I want to talk about tight end. Tight end's important because Darren Waller, one of the best plays on the slate. Dalton Schultz, one of the best weapons that's underrated and under-owned every single week for Dak Prescott. Now, if you're like me and you're going to go by the eye test of what you see on paper, you see Dak Prescott. He didn't look good. That his leg, it just, I don't know. He just looked like unnatural. He looked like he was throwing a lot of inaccurate balls, but that could just be his blindside protection. He needs to have that confidence booster back. So this is a great get-right spot. Playing at home, playing against Vegas, who tend to give up a little bit in that passing game. So this is a good bounce-back spot. So Schultz is somebody we want to consider. But man, TJ Hawkinson, if I have to play one player from the Detroit Lions, in my opinion, this guy is the most talented player they have from a skill position standpoint outside of DeAndre Swift. I firmly believe that TJ Hawkinson can be a game changer. He could get one of these 11 target games, maybe get a couple touchdowns, maybe go under owned because they're going to see that red number next to him. Don't pay so much attention to those. Those are important because obviously that's the positional rank against that team that they're playing, the defense, but it's not the end of the world, guys. So, yeah, I mean, you can look at that same game. Cole Kmet, you know, extraordinarily talented, did not get the looks. I mean, maybe Dalton is just not going to throw his way, so that's something we have to consider. You can go cheap here. Look at it, you know, you have Jimmy Graham. I don't know if he's going to get a lot of snaps, but if he gets 2, 3, 4 targets, he catches a touchdown, definitely going to return value. But I do feel like Darren Waller is probably going to be a must play on this slate. You're going to want to run its back, and Darren Waller is always going to be the favorite target for Derek Carr and the Raiders. Target count is 8, 7, 11, 5, 8. I mean, catching at least 80% to 90% of his targets. Definitely can return value without having to score touchdowns. I think he only has 2 on the year. Yep, 51 catches, 610 yards, 2 touchdowns. So obviously we're going to want to play Waller here. 6,400. We're not having to fight with those high-priced Kansas City Chiefs or a Devontae Adams or a Christian McCaffrey or expensive quarterbacks. So, you know, if you're building from a standpoint, you've noticed that we haven't even touched quarterback. We talked about a couple of quarterbacks, but we haven't really touched anything. So I love Ezekiel Elliott. I love Montgomery. I love Swift. I love Diggs, Waller. If you built with just a core of Elliott, Montgomery, and Waller, you're going to be left on DraftKings with an average of almost $5,000 per positional player. And you know we're not going to use that every position. Defense is not someone that I'm particularly going to care for. It's going to be kind of whoever fits. But honestly, if I'm really looking at it, I mean, Buffalo against New Orleans without Kamara, that looks pretty good. Chicago against a turnover-prone Detroit Lions, that looks pretty good. They're going to get some sacks. New Orleans against Buffalo, maybe they turn up. I mean, New Orleans does have a very a boom bust kind of defense at times. They're stout against the run, but they're definitely in play to get multiple sacks and things like that. But I'd probably stay away from the Cowboys and Raiders outside of GPP. They're absolutely in play here. So let's just say I go and I slot in the Bears, or I slot in the Bills. I think I'm gonna slot in the Bears just because I would probably get the most exposure from them. They just have always traditionally had a pretty decent defense, but they have had some swing plays here and there. I mean, not a ton of defensive touchdowns. I think 2 right now on the year, but this kind of seems like the game where Detroit's gonna throw some ill-advised passes depending on if you get Goff or don't get Goff, or you get Tim Boyle. So it's a team that we want to definitely can attack there. But whether you play them or you play the Bills, you're talking about $100 difference in between them. So if you're playing one of those defenses, you have $5,300 remaining on the salary standpoint. Obviously, from terms of service, I can't give you a full lineup, but let's talk about quarterback before we move on to the rest of any of the lineup, because I do want to mention that my quarterback pool is going to be extremely small. I'm going to be playing Dak Prescott. I'll play Derek Carr. I'll probably play some Josh Allen, probably not as much, but in GPP, I think he's definitely somebody who can break the slate. It's funny to think about that Josh Allen might go under-owned here. And I mean, I'm just talking about a preliminary ownership standpoint, but that could really happen. Just think about that. And he could definitely, with his legs, he can move those chains, and he could be the highest scorer on the slate. That's at every position. So it's someone to consider. I'm not going to play Jared Goff, because I don't have enough Detroit that I really want to pair with him. So I talked about correlation on quarterback, and I want to keep this short and sweet on this stream. I'm going to wrap up here soon, but with quarterback, I mean, you want to take some chances in GPP. You're going to want to play some Trevor Siemian, barf stacks. You're going to want to pair him with a Traquan Smith, a Marquez Callaway. I think we talked a little bit about a couple of those guys. Deontay Harris, I know he's popped up on a lot of projections. I mean, he's had some good games. I mean, he's only 3,700, and you can even look at it from the tight end standpoint. Troutman got hurt against the Eagles, so that looks like we got, I think, a Juwan Johnson. He could be the primary target here, but I think a lot of those targets are going to go to their wide receivers. So expect more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets from this Saints team. Now, I think and just the more I look at it, they're going to have a tough time. It makes me want to play the Bills defense more. So finally, like I said, quarterback, small pool, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, play some GPP with some Simeon, play some Andy Dalton, man. Andy Dalton could have a game. Could you imagine this guy holding a big old turkey leg at the end of the game? Andy Dalton with his fire red hair, and he's the one that won the game for them. I mean, it can happen. So you have to consider these things. And then, Taysom Hill, he's down there, guys. I mean, he's only, $4,800 on DraftKings. You want to play some GPP growth stacks, put you some Taysom Hill in there and just stack every other position. It's something to consider that is viable. I will say my preferred play out of most of these guys, I'm looking at in the wide receiver range. I just think Michael Gallup is still sub $6,000. I think you have to consider him with the weapons that Dak doesn't have. The ones that he does have they're going to get target funnels. So everything's going to be thrown to them. My favorite punt right now from a receiver standpoint, man, I just think that you really have to consider some of these New Orleans guys. I think that Harris is going to, really pick it up. I think he's somebody who could absolutely be a stud here. I want to say just last that the flex position can be whatever you want, man. You can play another running back. You can play a wide receiver, but most importantly, you can play another tight end. Don't be scared of that. If you want to play Darren Waller and you want to play Dalton Schultz, play them both. If you want to play Hawkinson and Waller or Hawkinson and Schultz, play them both, man. Like, I just feel like everybody in the industry is so wrapped up in, we got to use a running back or a wide receiver in that spot, and that's not the case, guys. So right under 20 minutes, I hope you were able to watch. Please hit the bell for the notifications, like and subscribe to this content, whether you're watching it on YouTube, Twitch, or you're just watching it off our site at yourfielderschoice.com. My name is Adam, also known as YFC V12. Thank you so much to our team, our NFL writers. Excuse me, I almost made it through without coughing, but I'm gonna cheers to you guys here. Before I go out on date night with my beautiful wife. Have a great Thanksgiving, guys, from yourfielderschoice.com. This is Adam, YFC V12 signing out. Let's go make some money.